When I entered the house, the kitchen light was on. I opened the door and saw my lover Brad leaving. I thought my husband was already asleep, but in the kitchen I saw Jack's silhouette. It all seemed so wrong to me. I regretted letting my lover sleep with me right before he drove me home. It was another "screw you" from him to Jack. I didn't think Jack knew about Brad. I was an idiot. Jesse, we need to talk," Jack said. Oh God, he's stuttering. This is important because for most of his young life, Jack stuttered so badly that it was usually impossible to understand him. They called him Stutter Jack. We met in college where we were taking advanced math classes. There were 8 people in the class, and Jack was the only one who wasn't failing. The professor wasn't helpful, he just confused us even more. We were sitting in the cafeteria when I said, "For the first time in my life, I'm sitting in a lecture and I don't understand what the professor is talking about. I have an exam coming up and I don't know where to start." Jack, who rarely spoke a word, stammered, "I'll help you." We looked at him in bewilderment. We knew he understood everything, but we couldn't understand him any better than the professor. I took his hand and said, "I don't know how this will work, Jack." He looked at my hand, smiled, and as clearly as if it were written on paper, explained how to solve the first problem on the test we had just failed. At first, I had to hold his hand or sit next to him. By the end of the semester, he had stopped stuttering. And then, we fell in love. Or rather, Jack fell in love with me. But now he was stuttering again, maybe even worse than before. Jack tried to say something else, but couldn't get my name out. He took out the yellow notebook, just like the day I first met him. He wrote something and showed it to me. "I know everything about Brad. I've known for a long time. Please go wash your face before I throw up on you." I wanted to say something, but he raised his hand. "Just in case," I added a little more deodorant. Returning to the table with my husband, or rather, my ex-husband, I said, "I want you to know that I broke up with Brad today." He wrote in his notebook, "There were others before Brad, and there will be others after Brad." What? How did you find out? When did you find out? He wrote in his notebook, "Are you trying to hide your affairs better?" I knew I was blushing, but that wasn't what I asked. I just phrased the question wrong. I meant, "Jack, if you knew about this before, why are you divorcing me now?" "Brad doesn't respect me, you laugh with him, you don't respect me." "That's not true, Jack." He wrote so quickly and with such force that he tore the paper and wrote, "Then why was your underwear dirty when you came over?" I started crying. He handed me the divorce papers and a copy of the private investigator's report. On the cover of the report, he wrote, "Brad's wife received a copy this afternoon." "Why, Jack, she doesn't deserve this." He said in his voice, "She damn well deserves to know." There was no stutter in that sentence, and I recoiled from his anger. He wrote again, "I am terminating the marriage contract. You have 3 days to get out of my house. Our joint credit cards are canceled as of 10 p.m. tonight. I have left you half the money in our account. You have 3 days to use your cell phone, after which it will be disconnected. Any questions?" All of these statements were written on separate pieces of paper. The kitchen floor was now covered with yellow sheets. I shook my head no in response to the question. "Any questions?" Jack stood up, grabbed the bag with his things that was lying on the floor next to him, and left. I sat there, and it took me back to that advanced math class when I didn't know where to start. Brad called and started yelling into the phone, "Why did your weak husband tell my wife about our affair?" "I don't think he's weak, Brad." I hung up and blocked his number. As I got dressed, I tried to remember when I fell out of love with Jack. Even before we got married, I knew I didn't love him. I admired him. He was incredibly intelligent. The math problems we struggled with were simple arithmetic for him. The difficulty was explaining them to us mere mortals. My first mistake was seducing him one night. It was easy, and he fell even more in love with me. I was his first, and he often said I would be his only. Our sex was warm and tender. I don't think Jack had ever seen an adult movie, and he had no idea how to satisfy me. My fear of hurting his feelings prevented me from giving him advice. I remember the first time I cheated on Jack, 2 years after our wedding. Sex with Jack was tender but boring, and I needed something new. It was just a one-night stand while I was on a business trip. I felt terrible. The second time was easier psychologically. I'm not sure I remember everything. There was a visiting professor from England, and he was the first man I spent several nights with. I had been faithful to Jack for only 2 years, and since then I have cheated on him almost constantly. In the morning, I read the private investigator's report over my cup of coffee. I felt sick. It became clear that I was a terrible person, no better than those who teased Jack about his stutter. The awful things Brad said about Jack and how I echoed him, laughing at my weak husband. No wonder Jack was divorcing me. There was a folder on the table that I hadn't noticed the night before. When I opened it, I found details of most of my affairs, even my very first one. Some I remembered, some I didn't. But it didn't matter. 8 of us who had been in the advanced math class remained friends for many years. Another couple got married, and 2 of the guys turned out to be gay and got married too. We all worked in higher mathematics, so we often saw each other at various conferences. But the weddings were wonderful because they gave us a chance to get together, all 8 of us. Jill was the odd one out in our original group of 8. She never married and, as far as I know, never dated. She was alone at all the weddings. Sometimes I thought she was a lesbian, but I was never sure. Jill was nice, and I'm sure many men were interested in her. Maybe she was dating someone but kept it a secret. I decided to call her, perhaps looking for sympathy. "Hi, Jill. It's Jesse. I don't know why I'm calling you, but Jack is divorcing me." "Finally, damn it!" I was shocked. "Jesse, remember that we all work in a very difficult field and earn good money. None of us would be here if Jack hadn't helped us get through that course, and it only took you 2 years to start cheating on him." Poor Jack. None of us in our little group of 8 could understand why he stayed with you for so long. We begged him to leave you, but he refused. By the way, we all knew how you cheated on him at every conference we went to. You have a pretty bad reputation in our profession, but not the kind most women would want. You won't get any sympathy from me, and if you caught on fire, I wouldn't even help you put it out. And don't expect sympathy from anyone else in our group. I'm probably the only one who will answer your call, but from this moment on, you're blocked. And I always thought I was so careful. Was I the laughing stock of our profession, or the whore of our profession? Was I the one who didn't deserve respect? It's been many years since I was invited to speak at a conference, and almost as many since I was able to publish an article. I tried to pack my things, but I couldn't hold back the tears as I realized how I had ruined my life. Between packing boxes, I called apartment rental agencies. I had no idea how expensive rent was. Finally, I called a moving company to put my things in storage and decided to stay in a hotel for a while until I found something more permanent. Before the movers arrived, I took one last look at what had once been our home. It was one of the best houses on campus. Houses like this were reserved for the most important department heads. I loved the ivy-covered walls, the beautiful landscaping, and the huge stone courtyard. Most of all, I loved the long, winding path leading to the front door and the huge chandelier visible through the window. My parents almost wet themselves when they saw it for the first time. After I settled into the hotel, I sent Jack a text message saying I was leaving. There was no reply. By the time I was finally divorced, I had a few $100s in the bank, a credit card with a $1,000 limit, and I was living in the same apartment I had when I was a graduate student. 7 years after marrying Jack, I was in exactly the same position I had been in before I got married. I deserved it. A year after the divorce, I went to a local conference. Jack was one of the keynote speakers and was scheduled to speak last, which was the most prestigious spot. I was looking forward to seeing him. The night before the main conference, I went to a party. There was a strange atmosphere among the women. I felt like everyone was avoiding me, None of the conference participants spoke to me. I wandered around the room feeling more and more uncomfortable with every step, when suddenly I heard Jack's voice. Jack didn't stutter. His deep baritone drew me to him. He was standing in the center of our group of 8 people discussing some economic model when he noticed me. The rest of the group turned to look at me. No one nodded or said hello, they just stared at me. Then I noticed that Jill had put her arm around Jack. Jill was the only one who smiled at me. Jack said, "Hi, Jesse. You look good." Then he continued his story. The group turned away from me, except for Jill, who continued to smile at me, and then I noticed her rounded belly. Jill must have been in love with him the whole time we were in Octate, waiting for me to ruin my marriage. Her patience was remarkable. I was happy for Jack and envied what Jill had. I had talked to Jack many times about starting a family, but he always put it off. Obviously, he didn't want to start a family with a cheater like me. In the end, I found myself back where I was before Jack. It seemed as if the entire industry had turned its back on me. Not only did I stop being invited to conferences, but I was also removed from guest lists. Things were difficult at the university because I wasn't publishing any articles. How could I explain that everything I sent to publishers came back unopened? I risked losing my job, and my ex-husband was the head of my department. I arranged a meeting with him. He was very gracious. "Come in, Jesse, have a seat." No sign of stuttering. I congratulated him on the birth of his daughter. He said, "I'm so happy about this girl, you have no idea, but how can I help you, Jesse?" "Jack, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I can't get anything published, and you know how much the university values the recognition of its professors. Jesse, as long as I'm chair of the department, you'll never be fired, and I plan to stay here for a long time." I thanked him and got ready to leave. I wanted to say I was sorry about how things had ended between us, but I saw the malicious look in his eyes. I turned and walked away. On the way home, I realized that I would never be fired, but I would always live in the same shitty apartment I had lived in when I first met Jack. I hadn't paid much attention to the professional lives of the other members of our octet, but that day I Googled each of them. They were all successful, heading departments at other universities or working in the private sector. They all had long lists of publications, many of which were co-authored with Jack. I was too busy having sex while Jack was helping our friends succeed. Jill had the most articles and the most co-authored works with Jack. The odd one out in our group of 8 was an Asian guy named Danny Sue. I Googled him and found out that he had developed his own energy trading software. His company went public around the same time Jack filed for divorce. Danny became a billionaire overnight, as did his early investors, other people from our group of 8. Danny was nominated for the Nobel Prize in Economics. I wondered why I hadn't been invited to be one of the early investors, and the answer was obvious. I also discovered that all the other members of our group of 8 were on the editorial boards of professional journals in which we published our articles. They had the right to veto any publication. While I was entertaining the men, they set a trap for me that I couldn't escape. Jill kept Jack close, waiting for me to go too far, and when I did, she was there to support him. Now she was carrying his children and living in the beautiful house that had once been mine. After our youngest child left for college, my wife Sheila decided that we needed to improve communication within our family. She chose Sunday evenings right after dinner for our little chats. We were supposed to discuss all important household matters, possible vacation destinations, and other issues that needed to be resolved. I expected the worst. The first Sunday chat went well. What the house needed, pest control, the condition of the roof, which rooms needed to be painted first. We ended the chat with a list and prioritized the items. Sheila was very pleased with herself. The first crack appeared during our second chat when we started talking about the lifespan of our cars. Although her car was newer than mine, she no longer wanted to drive the minivan we needed so much to take the kids to sports. Sheila wanted a certified pre-owned Lexus or BMW. Sheila, honey, you can buy any car you want if you pay for it yourself, I said. Why should I pay for it? You paid for the minivan and your SUV, she replied. Yes, I did. But we both work, so there's no reason why you should expect me to buy you a luxury car. For the first time in 10 years, I don't have a car loan, and I'm in no rush to buy a new one. I think my SUV will last me another 5 years, and your minivan will last even longer. It's not a necessity, it's a want, so go ahead and buy it. Just make sure you can afford the payments. Sheila blushed and left, slamming her bedroom door loudly. When we were younger, that meant I wasn't getting any that night, but I couldn't remember the last time we had been intimate. I usually slept in our older son's room, so the closed bedroom door didn't matter. Sheila started the third week with the car talk again, saying she had talked to my friend Matt, who worked at a Lexus dealership. She said I should be reasonable. I'm sure Matt told you that certified pre-owned cars are just a way for them to inflate the price, I said. But I can't afford a new car. Don't you want to chip in? No, Sheila, buy a Camry. It's almost the same thing. I deserve a Lexus after driving minivans for the last 12 years. Yes, you drove the minivans I bought, insured, and paid for all the maintenance on. You want a Lexus? So pay for it yourself. The car, the insurance, and the maintenance. I'm going to watch the game. Sheila sat at the kitchen table for another half hour, writing in the little diary she had started. Her bad mood lasted all week. We usually took turns cooking dinner, but that week, Sheila skipped her turn. I didn't mind eating leftovers from the night before. My parents had a cottage on a lake in the mountains. It was nothing special, just 2 rooms and an attic. The bathroom was in a separate building on the hill. The cottage belonged to me and my 2 sisters, who never went there. It had sentimental value for all of us, so we didn't want to sell it. On Friday morning, I left Sheila a note saying that I was going to the cabin after work and would be home for dinner on Sunday. She sent me a text asking me to make dinner. I had forgotten how much I loved the mountains, even though I spent the first day cleaning. No one had lived there for several months, and nature had taken its toll. The canoe was a thing of the past, and the dock scared me, so fishing was out of the question. I worked like a dog and was pleasantly tired when I got home on Sunday, just in time for our Sunday chat. Of course, I stopped in for dinner on the way. Sheila brought up the Lexus again and asked why I wouldn't help her be happy. Sheila, we've been married for over 20 years, and you should know that I don't change my mind once I've made up my mind, and you haven't given me a single reason to do so. If you're not going to change the subject of our Sunday conversations, you'll be talking to yourself. You're such a jerk, Brad. Why did I stay married to you for so long? I feel the same way, Sheila. And now, if there's nothing else to say, I'm going to take a shower. You better start planning how you're going to wash your clothes from now on. Sheila, I've been washing my own clothes for 10 years, and the family towels too. Whose clothes are you washing besides your own? Because if it's another man's clothes, he should be paying for your Lexus. The bedroom door slammed again. Sheila stopped mentioning the Lexus in our Sunday conversations and moved on to painting the house, which turned into a discussion about whether we should replace the furniture first. We don't need new furniture, Sheila. We've had the same sofa for 10 years. I want a new one. That's a want, not a need. Pay for your wants yourself, and as for the painting, I'll be busy fixing up the cottage for the next 2 months. The damn dock is about to collapse into the lake. Why should I care about the cottage, Brad? It's our property, and like any property, it needs maintenance to retain its value. Will your sisters contribute to these expenses? Of course. They offered to pay half the cost of the materials for the work I'll be doing myself. I don't think I'll be working on the dock, so we'll split those costs between the 3 of us. I spent most of the summer at the cottage, mainly to get away from Sheila. The children joined me when they came home for summer vacation. Sheila put our Sunday conversations on hold until the children went back to school. I had a couple of years left before retirement, and the idea of retiring to the cottage became very appealing, especially since Sheila had long since decided that she was better suited to life at the Hilton than in a cottage. As soon as the children returned to university, Sheila wanted to resume our Sunday conversations. They turned into sessions where Sheila listed all my sins. She had to take out the trash because I was at the cottage. When I came home, I did the laundry and drying. More and more household chores became her responsibility. I didn't understand what she was talking about. By the third or fourth conversation, I learned to keep quiet and let her talk. I usually thought about the cottage and the mouse problem. The worst part was when winter came. The cottage had a fireplace, but it wasn't meant to be used in winter. That meant I would have to spend even more time with sweet Sheila and her Sunday conversations. Sheila often noticed my inattention and complete lack of response. Fortunately, the children came home for the holidays, and I had a chance to rest until February. I prayed she would forget about it, but my prayers were not answered when I was called into the kitchen. "When are you going to start painting the rooms I want redone, Brad?" "This sounds like another one of your whims, Sheila, and there's a reason you can't repaint the rooms, isn't there?" "But you always paint in the house. Why are you so picky about this?" "Well, Sheila, these Sunday conversations have made me rethink a lot of things. Obviously, when the kids were little, you had most of the responsibility for them. Sure, I drove them to all their practices, lessons, and games. But you were their coach. You had to drive them." "We're getting off topic, Sheila. Painting is your want, and you're responsible for your wants, whether you paint it yourself or hire a painter, and of course, you're going to pay for it." The bedroom door slammed again. Sheila argued about the painting during the next 3 Sunday conversations, and it became increasingly difficult for me to concentrate. When I finally returned to the cottage, my concentration was at a child's level, so one evening I really angered her. Sheila was talking, and I was thinking about how to disinfect the cottage to get rid of the mice when she slammed her hand on the table. "Damn it, Brad. Are you even listening to me? I just said that I think we need to open up our marriage, and you're just sitting there staring into space. Well, what do you think? Are you serious, or are you kidding me?" "Yes, I'm serious, Brad. How have we stayed married this long?" "Is that a rhetorical question, or do you actually want an answer? And are there any ground rules for this open marriage? I can imagine you wouldn't want me bringing women home. But are there any women who are off limits to you? For example, your friend Stacy, who's been hitting on me for 10 years and gets bolder every year. Did you see her grab my ass when we were standing under the mistletoe last Christmas? What about Melinda? She's a little more sophisticated, but more my type. They're both 10 years younger than you, and I don't care who you date. Besides, it's much easier for a woman to find a sexual partner than a man." "Sheila, you're probably right in general. But I weigh almost the same as when we got married, and my pants size hasn't changed. I still have almost all my hair. You've easily gained 50 pounds since then, and how many dress sizes? Not to mention your flabby arms and sagging breasts." The bedroom door slammed again behind Sheila, who was crying. Maybe I was a little harsh, but her suggestion to open up our marriage had stunned me. Then I started thinking about Diane, the blonde who lived next door. I had never seen her with a man, and she was always very friendly to me when we met. The following Sunday, Sheila brought up the subject again and said once more that she didn't care who I slept with. I told her I wanted her to write down her rules and sign them, because when all this came crashing down on her, she wouldn't be able to use it against me in divorce court. She didn't give a damn about any rules. I said there would be no partners in the house. I'm sure you don't want to see Melinda running around in her nightgown. So that was our only rule. My company had a flexible schedule. I could work 4 10-hour days or whatever, as long as I worked 40 hours and got all my assignments done. That used to be impossible for me because of the boys' training schedule. But now it was perfect. I could leave for the cottage on Thursday evenings. I sent Sheila a text message to let her know that from now on, I would be leaving for the cottage on Thursdays. As a result of our Sunday conversations about how to improve our communication, we now communicated mainly through text messages. Since there was almost no reception at the cottage, I was away from Sheila for 3 days. Before I left on Thursday, she sent me a message saying she was leaving on Friday. I ignored it. On Saturday of that same weekend, I saw Diana, the blonde woman from the cabin next door, waving at me, and thought she was calling for help. Her cabin was on a hill in the woods, so I got in my Jeep and drove over there. During the storm, one of the cedar shingles had blown off the roof of her house, and she had stepped on it, piercing her foot with a nail. We wrapped her foot in a bandage to stabilize it, and I was able to lift her up and put her in the Jeep. As I helped her get settled, I realized that she was really very beautiful. As I sat with Diane in the waiting room, my phone rang. I laughed out loud when I opened a message from my wife's friend Sandy. "Sheila said you've decided to open up your marriage. If that's true, when can we meet? You know how long I've been trying to seduce you?" The next one was from Melinda. "I was looking over Sandy's shoulder when she wrote that message, and I want to be first. Sheila said you told her I was more your type. You're definitely my type, and I'd love to spend a long weekend at your cottage, and I don't care what the bathrooms are like." There were similar messages from women I barely knew or didn't know at all. Diane asked me what was so funny. 2 weeks ago, my wife said she wanted to open up our marriage. It wasn't my choice, but I agreed. I know she was out with her friends last night and must have told them, because I've been inundated with messages from half a dozen women since then. I didn't know you were married. I've only seen you with one woman and thought she was your daughter. Married for 23 years, and probably 22 since my wife was last in the cottage. She's more like the girl from the Hilton. That was my daughter. So, are you going to take advantage of these offers? Diane asked. No, although I agreed to Sheila's request, I'm pretty old-fashioned. Either you're married or you're not. I'm not a big fan of this New Age nonsense about open marriages. From what I've read, most open marriages end in divorce within the first year. Sorry for bringing up my personal problems. Don't apologize. My ex-husband tried to do the same thing to me. I refused, and now he's my ex-husband. I showed her the text messages, and she laughed. The nurses took Diane into the office and wheeled her out in a wheelchair an hour later. I noticed she wasn't wearing pants. I'm in deep shit, Brad, deep shit. I can't step on my foot for 24 hours, and I can't get home. How the hell am I going to get to my cabin, let alone the bathroom, and then home? They won't even let me wear pants for a week. They'll give me crutches that are useless outside the cabin. May I be your knight in shining armor, my lady. You're light enough, I can carry you and get you home easily. I barely know you, Brad. You're going to carry me up a hill so I can go to the bathroom? Anything my lady desires, I am ready to do. She cursed loudly and tried to pull her shirt down to cover her underwear. Well, my knight, let's get out of here. I picked her up again, put her in my SUV, and we drove back to her cottage, stopping on the way to pick up some takeout. Let me spend the night on your couch, Diana. If you need anything during the night, I'll help you. No, you have to sleep in my bed. There was a pause as we both realized what she had said. I'm sorry. The painkillers are wearing off, and my bedroom is pretty cramped. I'd rather sleep on the couch where I'll have more room to move around with my crutches. After dinner, I drove home to change and then returned to Diana's. She had fallen asleep sitting on the couch. I laid her down, put a pillow under her head, and covered her with a blanket. Finally, I was able to cover her underwear. In her bed, I was overwhelmed by her scent and didn't know how to deal with my agonizing arousal or how to behave around her. She called me in the middle of the night, and I rushed over to her. Brad, damn it, I really need to use the bathroom. Do you want me to take you to the bathroom? No. There's a bottle in the cabinet next to the bed, like in a hospital. Bring it to me, please, and some tissues. I ran to get them, then helped Diane move closer to the edge of the couch. Can you leave, my knight? I can't pee with you listening. A few minutes later, she called me again. Damn, this weekend couldn't get any worse, she said, handing me the bottle full of urine. You can pour this out by the foundation. It'll scare the mice away. I also picked up the tissues she had used to wipe herself. You don't know what this is, Brad. I have 2 sisters, a wife, and a daughter. I know what it is. She tried to lie down, and when I helped her, the blanket fell to the floor. I'm sorry, Brad. I have to let go of all modesty this weekend. She took another pain pill and fell asleep a few seconds later. In the morning, I woke up before her and found everything I needed to make coffee. The aroma woke her up, and I handed her a cup. You're definitely my knight in shining armor, but you know what's going to happen 20 minutes after I drink this coffee. I assume you'll need help getting to the bathroom. Yes, and I assume that when you volunteered to be my knight, you had no idea what you were getting yourself into. Seriously, Diane, I'm very happy to help, and a good knight never questions his lady's needs. Getting Diane to the bathroom was easy. Like most bathrooms, it was quite small, and she couldn't use her crutches to get comfortable. Finally, I was able to help her onto the toilet and close the door. Curses came from inside, and finally she asked me to open the door. We loaded all her things into my SUV and headed to her house. On the way, she called one of her friends to come and help her when we arrived. The night's services were no longer needed. I'll miss being needed. It was nice, especially helping a beautiful princess in distress. I offered to drive her back to her cottage on Thursday evening, and she agreed since we had left her car there. When I returned home on Sunday evening, the bedroom door was closed. I didn't complain. My body was filled with a happiness I hadn't felt in years, and Sheila's voice would definitely have ruined it. On Thursday, I left work a little early to pick up Diane and get home before dark. She was moving around pretty well and looked great in her denim shorts. She noticed me looking at her and smiled. At her cottage, I helped her unpack and return to mine, which suddenly seemed very lonely. When I woke up in the morning, Diane's car was in the driveway and she was sitting on my porch. I made coffee for my knight. She took the thermos and poured me a cup. You owe me, so let me start by inviting you to breakfast. Somewhere in my head, I had a list of things I wanted to do at the cottage that weekend, but that list disappeared. Diana and I lingered over breakfast until noon and returned to her cottage with sandwiches. She was still limping a little, but she was able to show me what she wanted to do this summer. After the tile incident, the first item on her list was roof repairs. She looked at me and I said that her knight didn't like heights. On Saturday evening, we sat in front of the fireplace drinking wine, and it was so peaceful. Brad, you know, if your knight wasn't married, I would repay him 1,000 times over for saving my life. I'm sorry, Brad, I can't cross that line. Me neither, Diane. If you ever get divorced, I'll take Melinda. Diane offered to let me stay the night, but I declined, and she drove me home. I really wanted to kiss her goodbye, but I managed to get out of the car without doing so. The next morning, she came over with coffee. Instead of going out, I made a couple of omelets. She was surprised that I knew how to cook. When we were married, my wife and I always shared the cooking duties. Last year, she quit because she didn't want to do it anymore. I told Diane a short version of our Friday conversation. On Sunday, Diana left early, and after lunch, I went home at the usual time. When I got home, Sheila was sitting at the dining table looking angrier than ever. I sat down across from her. She was tapping her card on the table. Who the hell is Diane? Diane is the woman who owns the house on the hill above ours. She cut her foot on a nail, and I took her to the hospital. By the way, Brad, I'm terminating our open marriage agreement. But let me read this card. Eternal gratitude to my knight in shining armor, the first man to see my private parts in the last 10 years. Your Lady Diana. Yes, Sheila. After they pulled the nail out, she couldn't walk or put any weight on her leg. So I helped her for the next 24 hours and then took her home, where a friend took care of her. And how did you manage to see her private parts, Knight? Where did you sleep that night, Knight? Actually, I slept in her bed and she slept on the sofa because the bedroom was too small for her to move around with crutches. Did you see her this weekend? Yes, I drove her back to the cottage so she could pick up her car. And I'm supposed to believe you didn't sleep with that woman all weekend? Well, since you've decided to open up our marriage, it doesn't really matter. But both Diana and I believe that married people shouldn't have sex outside of marriage. Go to hell, Brad, you agreed to this. Yes, I agreed, but I never intended to cheat on you. Well, I don't believe you didn't sleep with Diana. I'm sure she was very grateful to her knight in shining armor for helping her when she needed it so badly, and I decided last week to end our marriage after seeing all my so-called friends throwing themselves at you. That means you cheated on me, and I can't stay married to a man who cheated on me, so I'm divorcing you. I saw a lawyer on Friday, and you'll be served next week. You'd better find a lawyer, too. With that, the bedroom door slammed shut. I sat there in shock, mostly because of her reaction to Diana. The fact that she had ended our open marriage without warning didn't surprise me, which is why I had made her sign that document in advance. I took a shower and went to bed. Before falling asleep, I checked my phone and saw a message from Diana. Brad, I just received an almost incoherent voice message from a woman I assume is your wife. I'm sorry, she must have opened the card I sent you. I didn't even think about it. I'm sorry if this causes you any trouble at home. I wanted to be nice and joked that you saw my private parts. I blame it on the painkillers. I'm sorry again. No good deed goes unpunished. I thought she wanted an open marriage. I replied, Diana, I'm sorry you had to put up with my wife. She's gone crazy. Sheila didn't like that all her friends were trying to seduce me, so she ended our open marriage without telling me. Please don't worry, this is only a small part of the madness I've been dealing with for the past year, and I'm very sorry she dragged you into it. Monday was a normal work day, but I was a mess. I went to my boss and told him that Sheila had filed for divorce because she thought I was cheating on her. He told me to take as much time as I needed. During lunch, I got a message from Diana. I understand that Sheila has filed for divorce, and I feel responsible for it. I'm very sorry. I know a very good divorce lawyer if you're interested. I think I'll need one. It's hard to believe. It all started with her crazy idea, and now I'm looking for a lawyer. By the way, how did you find out? I'm a lawyer. I'll send you my office address. Let me know when you can come by. We need to talk. My boss let me out of work for the afternoon, and I found myself at Diane's office. It was big enough to play basketball in. She had 2 secretaries, one for correspondence and one for scheduling. Diane looked good in jean shorts, but she was stunning in a business suit. She hugged me, and we sat down at the conference table. I have to apologize again, Brad. I'm so sorry I'm destroying your marriage. The marriage was over a long time ago, Diane, and you had nothing to do with it. At that moment, a woman walked in. She was older than Diane, but still looked young. So, you're the knight in shining armor who came to rescue Diane? My name is Justin, and if you want, I'll represent you in the divorce proceedings. Yes, you can represent me, but neither I nor my wife have money for an expensive lawyer. I'll take care of that, Brad. It's the least I can do for helping me that weekend. I know how out of it I was, and you could have easily taken advantage of me, but you acted like a true knight. I was so confused that I didn't know what to say. Justin said, Diane already told me all the details about that weekend, so you don't need to repeat them. I'll question your wife, and I assume her lawyer will want to question you, so I'll have my assistant rehearse with you and give you some tips and advice. I have that too, I said, and handed her the open marriage agreement I had made Sheila sign. Well thought out, Brad. It would have been better if it had been notarized, but if she lies during questioning, I'll crucify her. I don't understand why she's suing you for adultery. In this state, it has no financial significance if you don't have a prenuptial agreement. We don't have a prenup. It was my sister's idea, but Sheila was against it. She must have some end goal in mind because I'm going to make her spend a lot of money. Why did your sister want a prenup? My parents were wealthy. Most of the money went into a trust fund for their grandchildren. My sister manages the fund. Does the fund own any real estate? Justin asked. Possibly a cottage near Diane's house. My sister is a lawyer. I never paid much attention to the trust fund. Justin left, and a young man came in, introduced himself as Justin's assistant, and said we needed to go over my statement. Diane apologized that she had to leave for another meeting and promised to see me before I left. She was still limping. Preparing to testify was exhausting. He apologized a dozen times and said we were preparing for the worst. He went over the entire weekend with me 3 times and pointed out all the discrepancies between my second and third answers. Then he repeated the same process with the open marriage document. When I came out, Diana was waiting for me. I hadn't even noticed that the sun had set. "Let me take you to dinner, Brad." I know how painful it is to prepare for a deposition, especially with Justin as your assistant. He's the best. "Give me your keys, Jack. My assistant will drive your car home." I gave her my keys, and she tossed them to some guy as the limousine pulled up. Someone else ran over and opened the door for us. "This isn't all mine, Brad?" Justin asked, and I never say no to Justin, and she never asks for anything I can refuse. Diana took me to one of those fancy restaurants you read about but never think you'll ever go to. There were no prices on the menu. "It's a private club, Brad. The company pays an annual membership fee that covers all food and drinks." "Do you eat here often, Diana?" "Only for business, mostly for lunch, maybe 2 or 3 times a month. Brad, you know how I like it. Cut-off jeans and something cooked over a campfire, but the food here is amazing." Diana started apologizing again, and I threatened to stick a nail in her other leg. "Justin was talking to your sister." Justin was impressed, and Justin is hard to impress. I wouldn't be surprised if she gets offered a job when this is all over. She has ironclad trust, and that was before Sheila married you. So she has no legal claim to anything in the trust, which contains a lot of securities. "How much is it worth?" "Easily $50 million. Your father wanted the money to pay for college for all of his heirs for several generations." "And how much do you think the cottage is worth?" "Maybe $110,000, and that's for the land. The cottage itself in this day and age, when everyone is building huge mansions, will be torn down." I don't know if Sheila has any idea of the real value of the trust, but I can imagine her fighting for the entire trust and then agreeing to the cottage to burn the place of her betrayal. I'll pass that thought on to Justin. If her lawyer isn't an idiot, he should realize that her plan won't work. He's not a very good lawyer and is the subject of a number of complaints about ethical violations related to promising the moon to increase his billable hours, and his promises turn out to be empty. I was in a complete daze, and Diane noticed. She told the limo to take me home and ordered another car for herself. On the way home, my sister Marge called me. "Do you know who's representing you, little brother?" "No, Marge. I spent 3 hours preparing for the testimony with Justin, my assistant. My mind is completely blank. So who's representing me?" "Justin Blumberg, the very same Blumberg whose name is engraved on the brass plaque at the entrance to the building. Her previous clients include some of the richest people on the planet. How did you get in touch with her?" I told her the story about my open marriage, the knight in shining armor, and the evening with Sheila. "What's Diana's last name, Brad?" "I don't know. I only heard it once. I'll think about it." "Well, if it's Sampson..." "Yes, Sampson. Diane Sampson is Justin's right-hand woman. She has been repeatedly recognized as one of the best lawyers in the country. I love you, brother, but you can't afford even an hour of Diane's time, let alone Justin or his assistant. 3 hours of case preparation is worth at least $10,000, and Diane charges almost $2,000 an hour. By the way, Diane said you made a big impression on Justin, and she wouldn't be surprised if you were offered a job. I'm happy where I am, Brad. I'm my own boss. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call." I mentioned my theory about getting a share in the trust to get the cottage. Marge said, "I can just picture her car accident lawyer singing that song to her, but trust me, she doesn't stand a chance. The best she can hope for is half of your third of the house. Justin will tear them to pieces." I'll spare readers the boring legal details that followed. The climax came when Sheila testified and realized she had mixed up the dates of our wedding and our first date. Her lawyer was present during her testimony and flew into a rage when he realized we had gotten married after the trust was set up. Diane couldn't believe that the lawyer hadn't checked this. Sheila was still trying to get something. My sister offered her $10,000 to give up all rights to the cottage. That was about how much Sheila had to pay her lawyer, so she agreed. Sheila would also get half of the proceeds from the sale of the house. After that, the divorce went smoothly. Without a large fee, her lawyer simply took care of all the formalities. Sheila got $10,000 and half the house, and I never saw her again. The children learned the whole truth when I sent them copies of the testimony, and they practically disowned their mother. They also happily called me their shining knight. Diana and I warmed up to each other to a certain extent, and then our relationship stabilized. We had great sex when she was at the cottage, but work kept her busy all week. I missed being a weekend lover, and there was no room in her life for anything more. Her trips to the cottage became less frequent, and during her last visit, she said we needed to break up. I replied that there was no one to break up with, and she left with tears in her eyes. By that time, I had retired and spent my first winter on a round-the-world cruise, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But I couldn't wait to get back to the cottage. The freedom to choose a direction and follow it until you hit trees or lakes. I had been there for over a week when one morning I saw Diana's car in the driveway again. She was sitting on my porch with a thermos of coffee, wearing those denim shorts I loved so much. "My night, you're finally awake," Diana said, pouring me some coffee. "You haven't been here in a while, my lady." "Yes, Brad. Too long. You know I can be pretty tough, so I apologize in advance. I'm sorry how things ended. I kind of lost myself. Justin noticed it, called me into her office last month, handed me my termination papers, and told me to go find my knight in shining armor. I usually do what she tells me, so here I am, hoping you haven't found someone else. You've been gone so long." "No one, my lady, but I'm very surprised to see you here." "I'm not surprised, Brad. The moment I said goodbye to you, I knew I was making a big mistake. I couldn't figure out how to balance you and my job. You know what I chose. I made a mistake. I knew it. Justin knew it. My secretaries knew it, but I didn't know how to fix it. Justin knew, and here I am." "Well, my lady, let's go into town and have breakfast." I don't know exactly when the problems in my marriage to Liz began. At the time of writing, we had been married for 25 years. The first 10 years were probably good. I don't know when the sarcastic remarks and humiliation began, especially in front of her friends. Perhaps after 20 years, our sex life disappeared. But I didn't complain. Liz didn't look very good, and excessive drinking and smoking had caused her to gain a lot of weight. Watching her roll over in bed was quite unpleasant. How long it took her belly to reach her shoulders, and how it bounced when I finally lay down on the bed. Perhaps it was the weight gain or excessive drinking that led to her unpleasant snoring. Every time I mentioned it, it was like lighting dynamite. After 20 years of marriage, I moved into the guest room. By nature, I tend to avoid conflict, which is strange, because my job as a forensic accountant involves a lot of conflict. After a day of arguing at work, I didn't need it at home. To keep myself sane, I worked 60 hours a week, plus time at home. If I wasn't working, I was coaching one of my two sons' soccer teams. When I wasn't on the soccer field, I was working out in the home gym I had spent over a decade building. Mostly, I was busy avoiding Liz's verbal abuse and trying to maintain my self-respect. But life has a way of making adjustments. I was 10 years older than Liz and had always planned to retire at 62. All the men in my family died at 65 from heart disease, and I was going to enjoy at least some of my retirement benefits. By the time I retired, my sons had outgrown football and my days as a coach were over. Now I had more time to spend at home with Liz. I don't know if the insults became more frequent or if I had more distractions at work, but I started to fight back. This only exacerbated the cycle. Minor comments that I had previously ignored turned into arguments. With the boys away at college, we had no reason to hold back. To get away from Liz even more, I started going camping. At first, it was short day trips, then overnight trips, and then almost a whole week. I enjoyed being in the mountains, away from Liz. The time apart didn't bring us closer together. It seemed like Liz was inventing new insults for me while I was gone. The second year of retirement was even worse. During my second year of retirement, when I needed to escape the winter, I bought an apartment in Florida. Or rather, we bought an apartment in Florida. Liz helped me choose it and then enjoyed furnishing and decorating it. I think we even got along well during that period. We planned to spend our vacations there and eventually retire to a warmer place than our current home in the Northeast. All the good feelings from buying the apartment disappeared a few months after the purchase when a fall hurricane hit that area of Florida. I decided to go there on Halloween to assess the damage. My neighbor reported that the screens had been torn off my porch. Fortunately, our small neighborhood escaped most of the damage reported in the news. Liz was upset that I had left. I tried to explain to her that I really needed to assess the damage inside the apartment. It took 2 weeks to repair the windows. Fortunately, that was the only damage to my apartment. The rest of the neighborhood looked like a war zone. I got home just in time to prepare for Thanksgiving. We always hosted both of our families. Depending on which nieces and nephews were coming, we could have up to 30 people in our house. We always prayed for good weather. When I got back, Liz was even more unpleasant. We couldn't agree on anything. We had been hosting Thanksgiving for 12 years. Arguing didn't help, so I said, "Whatever you want," and agreed to everything she wanted. That seemed to make her even angrier, that Thanksgiving was a disaster. There were 28 people in the house, and it was cold outside. To make matters worse, Liz's nephew, a drug addict, brought his dog, a big dog that thought he was a person. It annoyed me that she didn't ask me about it beforehand because she knew I hated dogs. The only thing Liz and I were good at was cooking Thanksgiving dinner. I cooked the turkey and potatoes, and Liz did everything else. We had a well-oiled system, well-oiled until it was invaded by a 220-pound furry dog. By the time dinner was on the table, I was a nervous wreck. The second part of our well-oiled system was washing the dishes and making dessert. I would rinse the dishes and load them into the dishwasher, while Liz and I would set the table for dessert. The damn dog kept getting in the way, licking the dishes in the dishwasher and jumping on the table, trying to eat the dessert we were preparing. I started yelling at the dog, and Liz started yelling at me for yelling at the dog. She talked to me like I was a 2-year-old, and I was ashamed of how she treated me in front of my brother. I left without saying goodbye to my brother, my wife, my children, or anyone else in the house. I went for a walk and ended up at a bar a few blocks from home. In the 20 years I had lived there, I had been to that bar 3 or 4 times, and this was the first time without Liz. Getting drunk was not an option. After a couple of whiskey shots, I spent several hours sipping beer. When I returned, everyone was gone, and my sons were very worried about me, but I assured them that I was fine. I went to the guest room and packed my things. The sun was just rising when I drove back to Florida. I figured Liz was probably tracking my cell phone, or maybe she just didn't care. My sons could have been tracking my phone too, although they texted me frequently to ask if I was okay. After a couple of weeks in the Florida sun, I felt much calmer and wanted to go home for Christmas. I texted Liz that I would be home on the 23rd. She replied, "No." "That's ridiculous. It's our home," I said. It escalated into an argument. She sent me long messages detailing all the terrible things I had done and how I had embarrassed her on Thanksgiving. We exchanged numerous messages about who had embarrassed whom. Then she said, "You left, and you can't just come and go as you please." "Fine," I said. "If I can't stay, I want a divorce, and we can sell this damn house." "Fine," she said, "and you can sell your damn apartment." The divorce was painful for me. She's a damn bitch and got half my retirement fund. It's just not fair. But by the following summer, we were officially divorced. Liz had to sell the family home by July 31st of the following year, and I had no deadline to sell my apartment. 7 months later, Liz shocked me by asking to spend a couple of days in the apartment to talk to me. I agreed, since half the house belonged to her. I had to emphasize that. She flew in and refused my offer to pick her up at the airport. After she arrived, we sat across from each other at the kitchen table with glasses of wine in our hands. "What do you want, Liz?" "I need more time to sell the house. My car broke down and I had to buy a new one. I need a 3-bedroom apartment, and decent ones start at $3,000 a month." "I agree. Until our youngest finishes school, and then we'll revisit the issue. The house is paid for, but after July 31st, you'll be responsible for all the expenses, including taxes and insurance." "Thanks. It'll still be cheaper than renting an apartment." She sat there twirling her wine glass, and I could see her eyes filling with tears. "Liz, you didn't fly here to ask me that simple question." "I flew here to apologize for how I treated you." I handed her a box of tissues. It was the first time she had ever apologized to me for anything. "Do you really think an apology will change anything?" Number. When you weren't here for Christmas, my sister tore me to pieces. Almost every woman in our circle dreams of a husband like yours, and you drove him away. And for what? You put my son and his dog above your husband? You're a damn fool. She insisted I see a psychologist. I followed her advice. The psychologist analyzed my relationship with you. I answered all her questions positively. You are an ideal father who always took care of our boys, trained them, and was a positive role model, even though you had a very stressful job. When we had events, you were always there, cooking and washing the dishes. We weren't rich, but we had everything we needed, and every year you took us on great vacations. I don't think you gained a single pound in the 20-plus years we were together. But I knew all this even before the therapy session because my friends always reminded me of it. I was often accused of stealing your youth, even though you were 10 years older than me. Comments about how fit you were during our summer barbecues by the pool. All my friends dreamed of a husband like you when we had parties. You did a great job landscaping the backyard. The list goes on and on. Instead of being grateful, I envied you. That's the word my therapist used. Before you retired, my friends always teased me that you would cheat on me because even at 50 you were still handsome. I told them that was impossible, that I always knew where you were. And when you retired, my friends, who had idolized you just a month ago, turned against you. You were supposed to become a house husband, cleaning the house, doing the laundry, and cooking dinner every night. And when you started going on week-long hiking trips, they were convinced you were cheating on me. Who goes to the mountains alone for a whole week, they asked. I let them turn me against you. On top of that, there were the usual things every woman goes through. Menopause. My breasts sagged, wrinkles appeared, I gained weight. Men stopped paying attention to me, I became invisible. They walked around me to look at some pretty girl. According to the psychologist, to cope with my low self-esteem, I needed to humiliate you. The psychologist listed all the ways I treated you. I was horrified to hear myself tell her what I had said, and you still bought me roses. Why are we going through this, Liz? It can't be fixed. Wait, it gets worse. In my sophomore year, when you started traveling for work once a week, I would go to a bar at the end of the block. I would put on makeup, wear a pretty summer dress, and start drinking. I liked the attention from men. Eventually, I went home with a guy, let him sleep with me, and do other things to me. I felt disgusted with myself. The sex was disgusting, but I was thrilled that someone found me desirable. That summer, I did it 2 more times. I hated myself, and hated you even more because without you, I would never have done anything like that. God, how I hated you. I know I made your life hell. The last straw was how I humiliated you on Thanksgiving Day. Liz emptied her glass, and I refilled it. I didn't know what to think. Liz's infidelity didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. And what good would this anger do? I was enjoying the good life in Florida, even though I wasn't interested in the women who flirted with me every day. Liz, is this supposed to make me feel better? Not really. According to my therapist, the confession is supposed to help me feel better. I guess this will be another round of verbal abuse. You don't look as angry as I thought you would be. What's the point? I'm not happy about it, but considering how you've treated me for the last 12 years, your infidelity isn't even in the top 10 worst things you've done to me. I deserve this, she said. Anything else, Liz? Because after that bombshell, I want to go to bed, and the sight of you is making me sick. She really started crying hard and whispered, "One more thing, please, before you go to bed." We sat there looking at our wine glasses, and finally she looked up and said, "I have breast cancer, stage 3. I'm going to lose my left breast and probably my right." Then she started sobbing uncontrollably. I rushed over to her, hugged her, and she buried her head in my shoulder and continued to sob. 2 minutes ago, I hated her with every fiber of my being, and now I was holding her in my arms. I need you. You've always been my rock, even when I hated you. I don't know if I can get through this without you. Please, let's go home. We sat down on the couch after standing in the kitchen for what seemed like minutes or hours. I don't know. After sitting on the couch for a few minutes, Liz laid her head on my lap and fell asleep within seconds. I sat there staring at my reflection on the TV, wondering what the hell I was going to do. When important decisions came up in my life, I always tried to choose the right option, not the one I wanted. Liz knew that about me. Part of me wanted to throw Liz out on the street. I think that's why she told me about her infidelity, so that I wouldn't know anything when I had to make a decision. Of course, I only had one option. Finally, I was able to slip out from under Liz and put a pillow under her head. I took the blanket and covered her before going to bed. It's funny how I tossed and turned before finally deciding whether to go home with her or not. When I got up, Liz was no longer on the couch. I thought she had left, but then I found her asleep in the guest room. After making coffee and gathering the ingredients for an omelet, I gently woke her up and told her breakfast would be ready soon. When she sat down at the table, I said, "I'm not going with you, Liz. I'm very sorry you have cancer, but you've been cancer to my self-esteem, my happiness, my sense of well-being. It took me months of therapy to understand why I had suicidal thoughts so often. I know you'll promise never to do this to me again, but it's in your nature. It comes so easily to you. Eventually, you'll go back to your old ways, and that will cause my cancer to consume me. I can't risk my mental health." She looked me in the eyes, and I swear I saw the old Liz, the sharp-tongued Liz, ready to fire off some cutting remark. Then her shoulders slumped as she realized that my prediction had come true, except that this time she was able to keep her mouth shut. When did I become such a mean woman? Death is knocking at my door and I'm a fucking bitch. I was a fucking bitch, and I knew I was a fucking bitch, but everyone else had to put up with it. You're kidding yourself. No one had to put up with it because I was pretty much the only target of your anger. I had to put up with it. As for your original question, I think your bitchiness started after our 10th anniversary. So you put up with me, you fucking bitch, for more than half of our marriage? I had my own entertainment, my career, the boys, their teams. I moved into the guest room, and as soon as the boys left for school, I started spending more time here or away from you. That Thanksgiving was the last straw. You could have found someone else in the last 10 years. Liz, do you hear what you're saying? You're a bitch even at your best. Imagine if I had left you for another woman. But more importantly, you already destroyed everything I was. All my priorities were focused on the boys, their well-being, and raising them to be good people. Imagine if one or both of them became your new center of attention. I couldn't take that risk. Do you really think I'm that evil? We sat and stared at each other across the cold remains of our breakfast until Liz looked out the window. I cleared the table and went for a walk. When I came back, she was gone. Liz died 6 months later. I flew in to support my boys, who were having a very hard time coping with her death. After the funeral, Liz's sister came up to me. Liz told me she was flying to Florida in the hope that you would come back with her. I told her I was praying you wouldn't come back. After she returned, she hardly spoke to me or our brother and never told us about her condition. It was your sons who told us that she was in hospice care and had returned to your home. I visited her at your house, and she told me that she had refused all cancer treatment, surgery, chemotherapy, everything. All she would allow was painkillers. I don't know what they talked about when she was in Florida. She never told me. But maybe she finally realized how badly she treated you. In her last days, she gave me this letter for you. I never read that letter. I didn't see the point. It's in a pile of things from my old house, along with all the love letters she wrote me in the early years of our relationship.